Any other comments?
Just for the record, Mr. Goodrow, I'd like to say, Ms. Domachenko, with regard to your question relative to real estate values and me being a realtor, I would not care to comment on that from the dais in the position that I'm in. Certainly off the dais, off the record, if you would like to ask, I'll certainly accommodate your question.
Any other comments from members of the public or the Township Committee? Okay, at this time, may we have a motion to close the public hearing concerning Land Use Ordinance 11-2010?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Sheridan, seconded by Mr. Ferramaska. On roll call, Mr. Ferramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Schleifer.
Aye.
Ms. Rowdy.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Oh.
Close the
Oh,
public
close.
hearing.
Sorry about that. Aye.
Mr.
I was
Capola,
thinking
aye to
so.
close the
Too late.
meeting, close the public
Open,
hearing,
close, open,
and then
close.
Mr. Sheridan.
Aye.
Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, bear with me. Before the Township Committee can even consider adoption of the ordinance, the land use law requires that the Township Committee approve a resolution setting forth the reasons why it should adopt Land Use Ordinance number 11-2010. So once again, please bear with me as I read the resolution into the record, again in conformance with the law. It's a resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover setting forth the reasons why it should adopt Land Use Ordinance number 11-2010, notwithstanding the Planning Board's opinion and recommendation concerning Ordinance number 11-2010's inconsistency with the land use element of the master plan. Whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover has introduced Ordinance number 11-2010, entitled An Ordinance of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover, amending and supplementing the provisions of the regulations of the RM2 Zone District in Chapter 166 of the Code of the Township, entitled Land Use and Development Legislation, in order to encourage the development of affordable housing. And whereas Ordinance number 11-2010 proposes to amend the RM2 Zone regulations in order to permit a mixed-use project incorporating an affordable housing component. And whereas, pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-26A, the aforesaid ordinance was forwarded to the Planning Board for a report and recommendation. Whereas the Planning Board, pursuant to its letter to the Township Committee, dated March 11, 2010, stated that Ordinance 11-2010 was inconsistent with the master plan, but that the Board nonetheless recommended approval of Ordinance 11-2010. And whereas NJSA 40:55D-62A provides in pertinent part, and I quote, the governing body may adopt a zoning ordinance or amendment or revision thereto, which in whole or part is inconsistent with or not designed to effectuate the land use plan element and the housing plan element, but only by affirmative vote of a majority of the full authorized membership of the governing body, with the reasons of the governing body for so acting set forth in a resolution and recorded in its minutes when adopting such a zoning ordinance, end quote. And whereas the Township Committee desires to state for the record its reasons for adopting Ordinance 11-2010 as required by NJSA 40:55D-62A, notwithstanding the Planning Board's opinion that said ordinance is inconsistent with the master plan. Whereas the Township Committee concurs with the reasons for adopting Ordinance number 11-2010 and departing from the recommendations in the master plan as stated in the Planning Board's letter as follows. 1, and I quote, at the time of adoption of land use and housing elements of the master plan, the Board did not anticipate mixed-use development for the zone. The Board, however, has no objection to mixed-use development in appropriate locations and believes that the zone is such a location. The zone already contains both residential and non-residential development. Both residential and non-residential developments and zones abut the RM2 zone. 2, the Board believes that the mixed-use development standards proposed in Ordinance number 11-2010 are appropriate for the zone. 3, the standards in the RM2 zone for single-use development both residential and non-residential, are not being affected by ordinance number 11-2010 and will remain consistent with the master plan. 4, the current housing plan, which does not include the RM2 zone, was based upon different affordable housing obligations and rules. The board is currently preparing a new housing plan that will reflect current obligations and comply with current rules. The board anticipates incorporating the RM2 zone as part of the revised housing element. The board also notes that a revision to both the land use and housing plan elements of the master plan will be necessary in response to the revised third-round affordable housing obligations imposed by the state. Any inconsistencies between the master plan and ordinance number 11-2010 will be eliminated at that time. And whereas the Township Committee also believes that ordinance number 11-2010 furthers the purposes of the municipal land use law by 1, promoting the public health, safety, and general welfare, both providing for appropriate development and for affordable housing. 2, providing adequate light, air, and open space. And 3, promoting the establishment of appropriate population densities and concentrations that will contribute to the well-being of persons, neighborhoods, communities, and regions, and preservation of the environment. And whereas the Township Committee directs that the minutes of this meeting include the above reasons for proceeding with the adoption of this ordinance. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover and the County of Morrison, State of New Jersey as follows. 1, that an ordinance of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover, amending and supplementing the provisions of the regulations of the RM2 zone district in Chapter 166 of the Code of the Township, entitled Land Use and Development Legislation, in order to encourage the development of affordable housing, be passed on final reading, and that a notice of the final passage be published in the March 18, 2010 issue of the Hanover Eagle. And 2, that certified copies of this resolution shall be transmitted to the Hanover Township and Morris County Planning Boards, all continuous municipalities, the Township's professional planner, the Township engineer, and construction official for reference and information purposes. Do we have a motion on the approval of the resolution?
So moved.
So moved by Mr.
Second.
Sheridan, Mr. Faramasca. On the approval of the resolution, Mr. Faramasca,
Yes.
Mr. Schleifer,
Aye.
Ms. Arati,
No.
Mr. Poland,
No, it's no.
Mr. Sheridan.
Aye.
So approved, 3 A's and 2 nays. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on the adoption of the ordinance,
Do I have a question before that? And I know you'll know the answer. This came up in the past, and I can't remember the answer to that. The Horton site is directly adjacent to this site. So it would be within 200 feet of this site. Now, when you're noticing people, do you notice only the owners of Horton, or do you have to notice the people because they own the condos and they own the land? So you have to notice everybody, and you did?
that's correct, Committeewoman Arati.
Oh,
We
okay.
have the proofs of publication
Right.
and my affidavit that everyone that lives within 200 feet, including D.R. Horton,
Okay.
was served by certified mail.
Okay, so all of your Horton owners
And I
of the
believe that's why
condos?
you have some of the residents here
Great,
tonight.
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, on adoption for ordinance 11-10, be it resolved that an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover, amending and supplementing the provisions of the regulations of the RM2 Zone District in Chapter 166 of the Code of the Township, entitled Land Use and Development Legislation, in order to encourage the development of affordable housing, be passed on final reading, and that a notice of the final passage of the ordinance be published in the March 18th issue of the Hanover Eagle in accordance with law.